Welcome to Midnight Casebook, where every shadow hides a secret and every mystery begs to be solved. Tonight, we unravel the chilling tale of Father Brown and the Sparrow that sang at midnight, a fan-made story paying homage to the brilliance of G.K. Chesterton's legendary detective. We'd love to have you along for this enigmatic journey. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Share your theories, and if you spot any inconsistencies, don't hesitate to call them out. Your keen eyes and sharp minds help us craft even more captivating mysteries in the future. Chapter 1: The Stillness Before the Storm. The thunder's low growl reverberated through the narrow lanes of Holloway, echoing the terror that gripped the villagers as they clustered in anxious knots outside the grand but now sinister manor of Sir Reginald Hawthorne. A muffled scream had rent the evening air, moments before a candlelit figure faltered at the upstairs window, casting a flickering shadow against the curtain, a silhouette that could scarcely contain the horror it cloaked. Father Brown hurried closer, the cool rain mingling with the rough fabric of his coat, each raindrop amplifying the dread that clung to the thrumming pulse of the night. "He's dead. I swear it was me." The anguished voice cut through the cacophony, rising stark and clear above the pounding rain. Standing in the soaked earth beside the weathered gate was a trembling housemaid. Her face shone pale, and her hands stained with the feathered remnants of an earlier brutal struggle, clutched at her apron as if grasping for comfort. The crowd inhaled sharply, drawn in like moths to a flickering flame, their whispers of disbelief igniting the sparks of dread already smoldering at the heart of the village. Father Brown, with eyes that sparkled beneath his brow, assessed the scene thoughtfully. The manor loomed darkly behind him, its grandeur now a facade, while the sparrow stationed outside the study window fluffed its wet feathers, a sentinel to some unfathomable truth. Holloway was a village accustomed to calm, its harmony shattered by this gory disruption of peace. A grand gentleman now void, a respectable life extinguished behind a barrier of oak and secrets. A garbled voice broke through, echoing the maid's admission. "You can't kill a man in a locked room without help. You killed him, didn't you, Mary?" The accusation, flung by a nearby villager, introduced doubt into the tempestuous air. Father Brown stepped forward, familiarity dawning in the tension-filled space. Words fell like breadcrumbs from the diaphanous lips of those who thought they knew the housemaid. Yet a glimmer of innocence wavered in her eyes. She might yet be a misunderstood harbinger of truth, rather than the villain, for all that she rattled against the ethereal barriers set by fate. "Calm yourself, Mary," he said gently, his voice smoothing the sharp edges of her trembling despair. "Tell me what happened, and be assured, your words bear no immediate condemnation." He set his gaze upon her, seeking the flame of hope buried beneath the shadows, flung by guilt. As the maid divulged the confusion of hours past, Father Brown sensed the peculiar blend of despair and relief. Relief from the burden of carrying a secret no longer. "He was alive when I left. I swear it. I went to fetch him his tea. A simple task, sir. I don't know how I came back. The door was locked. I heard the struggle, and when I entered, the chair was knocked over." Her breathless recount raining forth like the torrents of rain enveloping the night, she cast a desperate glance back at the towering manor, perplexed and a hint pitiful like a bird stricken, as doubts fluttered in the very marrow of her words. Father Brown led the way towards the door, brushing aside her further protests. His finger traced patterns along the ledge of the locked door, relishing the presence of a wooden surface marred by invisible sins. A single, small footprint remained visible on the dusty floor inside the study, almost innocuous but traceable back to the open window. In a hushed fury, he whispered to himself, "A storm brings both tempest and revelation." The locked chamber, its veneer of security punctured by opened windows and falling light, hinted at a hidden malice rather than an explicit crime. The night grew dense with the pungent scent of earth and trepidation, the writhing darkness promising more agonies yet unvoiced and enigmas too perilous to ignore. As word spread through the village, hushed voices exchanged scraps of gossip. "He was a cruel man, they say," murmured a widow, framed in candlelight, her old face knitting with worry, "the kind to brood over every detail." "Might have been the maid's revenge after all," responded a stout farmer, nodding sagely as if he had seen some battle unfold against a backdrop of lingering regret. She knew him too well, she and he, staring into the night. If only he had concealed his heart more. Yet Father Brown, standing amidst this gathering storm of accusations and sentiments, did not believe in the simplicity of murky predictions. It was the serenity of assured knowledge behind dreadful veils that shone within his heart. A loss brought about by dark instincts held the truth in its gnarled hands, and it became evident to him that things were amiss beyond mere treachery. But just as he resolved to draw back the curtain of certainty, a sudden crack split the heavens, illuminating the manor with a flash of fierce white, the sound of insistent thunder following closely in its wake. A cry wrung itself from the murky depths, drawing villagers' gaze towards the manor's door, as out burst a figure robed in darkness, a shadow so wretched it obscured the other terrors lurking in the folds of night. "Father Brown, you must come quickly," cried a frantic voice. Mrs. Hawthorne, still locked in the bespectacled cage of widowhood, but now bearing the edges of some unspeakable tale. "You shall not believe. It was not just Reginald. There's something else." Her words fell heavy, dripping malice and concern, as she stumbled forth, eyes wide, drawing the focus of the villagers all back to the manor. Father Brown's brow knitted. "What do you mean? What lies behind this veil of death?" Before she could respond, the ground shook as another clap of thunder rumbled ominously above them. All at once, a flash of lightning illuminated the manor, striking the high window where the maid had claimed to see the struggle unfold, and suddenly silence enveloped the crowd. The window, now in stark focus, revealed a previously hidden detail, a blood-stained letter fluttering ominously within the sash, and the figure of that Sparrow, still sitting, as if it were an omen of the truth, finally approaching. With a deep, quivering breath, Father Brown took a step forward. Yet before he could reach for the letter, the Sparrow took flight, vanishing into the darkness, as if offering a prompt. He hardly had a moment to digest the clue before he felt the ground turning beneath his feet, an undercurrent shifting in the very fabric of the mystery. "Father Brown!" Mrs. Hawthorne screamed, her voice cracking through the tension, as the door swung open wide and the thunder roared, swallowing the last of her cryptic words just as the air grew leaden, and something truly dreadful began to unfurl from the shadows behind. Chapter 2. The Sound of Silence. "Take cover." A sudden crash of lightning lit up the room like the flash of a gun, and with it, the shrieks of the guests echoed against the walls of the dimly lit study, their faces pale against the flickering shadows cast by the nearby candlelight. Father Brown's heart raced as he jumped back, reflexively clutching the door frame. The very air was thick with apprehension, mingling with the scent of damp wood and encroaching dread, as a dreadful thought flickered through his mind. Danger now lurked not just outside in the storm, but inside the very walls of the manor. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he shouted over the cacophony, his voice firm as it cut through the rising panic. "What do you mean? What else lies hidden in this manor?" He scanned the room, letting his gaze sweep over the assembled mourners, each face a mask of grief and suspicion, taut with secrets that wrapped tighter around them than the oppressive storm outside. Heads turned, whispers flitted like spirits, merging with the wind that howled beyond the edges of the estate like a banshee, wailing its lament. "I saw it," she cried, breathless, her eyes alight with manic urgency. "Reginald. He wasn't alone at the end. There was a letter in his hand." She faltered, glancing nervously towards the window, as if fearing the rain might carry away her words. "And the moment I entered, before the storm broke loose." The other guests shifted under the weight of her revelations, some casting furtive looks at the maid, others narrowing their eyes at one another, each weary of the depths of betrayal. Father Brown took a step closer, determined to usher clarity into the swirling chaos. "Reginald Hawthorne," he mused aloud, embracing the role of the observer while searching each expression as a painter his canvas, was not just a figure of authority, but the very embodiment of Holloway's charm and fear. Yet it seems even in death, he holds dominion over the souls present. He paused, letting the tension knit tighter, testing the motives of those who cloaked themselves in grief. "You suspect he had accomplices in his demise? Perhaps someone stands eager to take advantage of this tragedy. Who stood to gain from his passing?" The room tensed as the audacious question hung like an echo through the manor's long corridors. At the edge of the crowd, a tall man with distinguished features, the late Sir Reginald's lawyer, Mr. Hawthorne Thompson, stirred, the corners of his mouth pinching as he wrinkled his brow. "We should refrain from leaping to conclusions, Father Brown. Grief can distort reality." His voice had an edge sharp enough to cut through the dim-lit gloom, an unlikely veil over desperation. Father Brown was not so easily swayed. "I speak not in haste of conclusions, but of interrogations. A letter, does it not strike you as rather convenient, Mr. Thompson? Perhaps it reveals a genesis of survival beyond the grave." Silence brooded, attenuating the distress swirling about the room as he asked bluntly, "What of the will? Was there anything in it that might suggest a motive for murder?" "Enough." Mrs. Hawthorne's tone dripped with an authority almost shrouded in the grief of her widowhood. "You do not understand the circumstances. Reginald was always guarded. His affairs were complicated." Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of a brass candlestick, her knuckles turning white under its weight. He had secrets. And this letter, it could have been disastrous. Disastrous enough to incite murder, Father Brown pressed, not letting his scrutiny waver. His instincts thrummed alive like the storm outside, each person before him an unwitting player in a potentially deadly game. He caught a glimpse of the trepidation that paired itself with Mrs. Hawthorne's grief, an emotional duet that suggested more than what was visible at first glance. "Stop it! Just stop!" The compelling outburst came from Mary, the maid, snapping with a mix of resolve and exasperation. The room turned to her, waiting with bated breath. "You all accuse me, but I loved him. I did. He was not just my master, He was my confidant, my heart. She blinked away tears, face blanched with ardor and fear. If anyone wanted him dead, it was the others. Ask Mrs. Hawthorne. Frustrated wives can carry secret knives within their hearts. Father Brown observed the interplay of fears and emotions, the maid's outburst of vulnerability juxtaposed against the clenching fists of hidden resentments surrounding her. It struck him. The intricate desperation coiled around them all, like shadows, seeking answers, sifting through morality like a wave looking for shores unseen. Lady Hawthorne, he turned his attention back, have you noticed anything unusual? Anyone acting suspiciously in his final days? Perhaps a quarrel took place, or threats uttered. Anything out of the ordinary. Her lips pressed tight, as if she were locking away the secrets of her marriage. No, quarrels, she replied finally, her voice wavering but steady as she made eye contact with Father Brown. But might I add, Reginald did mention a report he received, a note filled with dire warnings just days before he was found dead, but he refused to tell me about the contents, only that it had irked him terribly, leading him to seclude himself in his study more than usual. The very tone with which she spoke bore witness to deeper strains, rekindling suspicions he had held. What report? What was said? Father Brown demanded, urgency piercing through the room. In the hearts of basement gossip and simmering tempers, a tangled web of connections began to emerge, the clue of the mysterious letter banding tighter around the exile of agonizing delay. It was then, a clap of thunder resonated like a gunshot as the lights flickered and burst into darkness. Only the candlelight illuminated them, leaving shadows to dance ominously on the walls and further heightening their dread. But even in that darkness, they all felt it, the shift of energy, the sliding of eyes across the room in suspicion. With a sudden crash, the very door through which they had thought closed against the storm erupted inward, flung wide, and a figure stumbled into the room, breathless and chilled. "I have it!" Gasps fluttered through the room as another deep voice filtered through the tension. A young man, soaked and wild-eyed, brandishing something glimmering in his hand. Beyond the flicker of candlelight, he held a blood-stained letter, its edges curling as if it had barely escaped the gullet of the storm unfurled outside. The light caught a word, a crucial name, scratched across the skeletal surface, spinning knowledge anew that no one in that room had anticipated nor wanted to confront. "Father Brown," he gasped, "you must see what's written here. It's all connected." But before the community of grief could coalesce around this newly revealed terror, the lights flickered one last time and plunged them into profound darkness. Then a desperate scream echoed above them, piercing through the heavy silence, unsettling as a distant bell tolling a reminder of their doom. Father Brown's heart sank. He sensed the walls around him were collapsing. Not just the house of grief, but a house of cards built on deceit, lies, and hidden motives ready to come crashing down. Each revelation trembled echoes of questions. Who among them had truly orchestrated this charade, and at what cost? In that suffocating dark, Father Brown felt the pressing weight of time. Something had been set in motion that they could not stop, a reckoning painfully near. Only then did he realize the scope of their burden, each figure before him quaking with terror, yet illuminated not by candles, but by the stark light of ultimatum. Alas, the journey to uncovering the truth had truly begun. Chapter 3. The Whispering Will. A piercing scream shattered the stillness, echoing through the manor like a gunshot in the night. vibrating against the cold stone walls and echoing off the rain-laden windows. Father Brown stood frozen, heart thrumming in his chest, as the candle flames flickered wildly, casting monstrous shadows that danced upon the mourners' faces, now drawn in stark terror. "Who was that?" someone whispered, their voice nearly drowned out by the relentless pounding of raindrops drumming against the roof. Each sound a reminder that the storm outside raged on, indifferent to the turmoil unfolding within. "Where is Mary?" Mrs. Hawthorne's voice wavered, like the flame before him, tinged with panic, as she grasped the arms of a nearby chair, her knuckles white. The air thickened with dread, every soul present acutely aware that this dark night held more than just the fierce storm. It cradled secrets and shadows that threatened to consume them all. The heavy oak door, barely ajar moments before, swung fully open with a sudden gust, revealing only darkness beyond. The echoes of her scream hung in the air like the clinging scent of rain-soaked earth, urging Father Brown into action. "This isn't the time for despair," he declared, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "We must find her." As he stepped further into the disarray, candlelight flickered again, illuminating the young man who had rushed into the room moments before, the one clutching the blood-stained letter as if it were a talisman against the impending doom. "Father Brown, the letter," he gasped again, bringing it forth, yet not entirely certain the others would receive it willingly. "It mentions the will, hidden conditions that could tear apart this family." His words fell like stones into the murky waters of their atmosphere, stirring the calm that hadn't existed since Reginald's demise. Father Brown focused on the paper, its edges curled, tinged with crimson that glimmered like a sinister smile beneath the pallid light. "What conditions?" he asked, leaning closer, observing not just the letter, but the hands that trembled within the grasp of the young man. "What does it hold?" I came straight from the study," the young man stuttered, his voice trembling as much as his body. "It was hidden behind the loose floorboard beneath the desk. I saw Lady Hawthorne earlier, shuffling through papers. It was almost—" His words trailed off, and just then another crack of thunder set the room on edge, more palpable than the dread pooling in their stomachs. "Almost what?" Father Brown pressed, sensing that hesitation always bore the weight of truth, lingering just beneath the facade. The young man swallowed hard, his eyes darting around to catch the gaze of each person in the room, as if seeking reassurance or permission. "I thought it was a warning," he continued, voice barely more than a whisper. "But now, it's a curse." Amid their shared horror, Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze turned icy, her expression quickly hardening. "You're suggesting my husband neglected to share his last wishes with me?" She pulled herself to her full height, her posture regal but strained. "That's preposterous. Reginald wouldn't hinge our future on mere words." Father Brown watched closely, his eyes narrowing, as each syllable exchanged transformed the air into a treacherous minefield of accusations. Perhaps he feared that those very wishes would inspire treachery rather than unity. He remarked slowly, drawing from the silk of the tension that enveloped them. "In chaos, some find clarity, but others find swords." "It seems clarity grows thick in the shadows," the young man interjected, pointing nervously toward the letter. "One clause speaks of the division of property, but it's conditional on one family member's behavior." "Behavior? What sort of behavior?" interrogated Mrs. Hawthorne, and the tremor in her voice betrayed the stoicism she fought to hold. "Discretion. He replied lingeringly, as if each letter weighed heavier than stone. Reginald stipulated that anyone revealed to have committed. Then a thudded noise interrupted him, and they all turned toward the sound, heartbeats echoing like footsteps in the disturbing quiet. A frequent guest, the lawyer, Thompson, had fallen to the floor, gripping his chest as if the very idea of accusation strangled his breath. Thompson! Father Brown rushed to his side, knelt beside him, keenly aware of the thin line between life and accusation fraying against the backdrop of centuries-old oak. He was... Thompson, Father Brown steadied him with a hand. The will. What does it entail? I helped him. The lawyer gasped, eyes wide with the dawning realization, the blood in his face draining. And Father Brown was struck by the peculiar baptism of fear. I thought it a safeguard, a measure of loyalty. But loyalty to what? Father Brown asked, drawing nearer, the storm amplifying the pressure within the candlelit room. To protect his wife, or to protect yourself? Both, Thompson exclaimed, the words bursting from him like a geyser of emotion. There are dead ends. It was my duty to ensure the estate departed to the proper heir. Your duty, Father Brown echoed, or your guilt? An unsettling tension flashed across the room as they realized that beneath Thompson's facade of dignity lay the twisted roots of motive ensnared by admiration, or perhaps something stronger, perhaps greed. And it was then that the candlelight flickered one more time, sputtering against the wind, shadows stretching out like desperate fingers, as another reeds-like chapter began. Father Brown felt his net of inquiry tighten, connected threads of deception, entwining with the fragile bonds of trust. We must find that will immediately. The conditions may save some and condemn others, he declared, standing. Our esteemed host still has things to say from beyond the grave. But the moment he reached for the letter, a blood-curdling scream cut through the clashing storm outside, louder than thunder, brimming with unrestrained horror. They all spun around to see the source, the door flying open once more, a silhouette almost luminescent against the torrential rain, and within the blackness limped Mary, bloodied and shaking, cradling something tightly against her chest. I found it, she screamed, her wide eyes reflecting the flicker of candlelight, her voice mingling with the wailing storm outside, each syllable soaked with urgency. I found the will. It's more than just words. It's the key to everything. Her voice broke, and she dropped to the floor with a dramatic thud, the rain-soaked envelope slipping from her fingers, spilling its contents across the floor like the scattered bones of a long-forgotten secret. In that kaleidoscope of fear, Father Brown's instincts surged. This was no longer an idle mystery. The stakes had just risen, and the truth was at last ready to reveal itself, full of claws and teeth. Yet as he bent low to inspect the contents, darkness clawed at his senses. A sharp bang echoed from somewhere deeper within the house, and instinctively, Father Brown knew something worse was stirring within the walls of the Hawthorne Manor, making clear that amidst their search for answers, peril lurked much closer than they'd anticipated. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Library. A resounding crash shattered the fragile stillness within the darkened library, where years of dust had settled like secrets, stifling the very air the guests breathed. Father Brown barely had time to regain his composure before the flickering candlelight exposed an unsettling tableau, the shadows stretching as if caught in a desperate dance. Mary lay sprawled upon the parquet floor, her pallid skin glistening with rain, and something darker, smudged across her hands and gown. It was as if the weight of the world pressed upon her limbs, demanding acknowledgement of some unspeakable truth that lay hidden in the shadows between the tomes that adorned the shelves around them. "What have you done?" her voice quavered, arms outstretched like a prodigal daughter, returning not in reverence, but in trembling accusation. "Mary, what happened?" Father Brown rushed to her side, but found his heart thundering in sync with the storm that threatened to tear the house apart. Amidst the oppressive atmosphere, he caught a glimpse of the envelope she had held so tightly. It lay splashed open near her feet, contents spilling like sins from a broken confessional. The brittle sheets of parchment scattered across the floor, practically begging to be read. But what leapt forth from her lips held Father Brown's rapt attention. "There's something in the library," she stammered, eyes wide, filled with terror. "A journal, a forgotten account that could change everything." "Change what, dear girl? Is there more to this dark family history?" he pressed, picking up a few sheets of paper, tactfully avoiding the wetness that seeped from her fingers. Behind him, as the shadows shifted and curled, whispers of old misdeeds echoed through the ancient wood, each creak a remnant of long-buried betrayal. It suggests Reginald had hidden motives beneath the surface of his charming facade. He kept it from everyone, and now... She glanced nervously at the doorway, as if expecting someone, or something, to witness an unfurling truth. Is it possible he knew this night might come, or that the will itself was a mere deceit? The question lingered, heavy in the air, beckoning Mary to confront the implications of her suspicions. The wind outside howled more intensely, seemingly mocking the very idea of safety within the walls of the Hawthorne estate. "He was terrified," Mary murmured, struggling to her feet. "He spoke of betrayal from those he trusted most. That's why he kept the will a secret. Why he was so anxious." A flash of lightning illuminated her countenance, revealing the fervor of her fear, and for an instant, Father Brown caught sight of something deeply etched into her features, a haunting familiarity mirrored in the depths of her wide eyes, akin to a lost child's quest for moral clarity amid the storm. "Tell me, Mary," he encouraged gently, "what do you know?" She hesitated, glancing toward the towering shelves that loomed around them, like silent watchers of human folly, before lingering on an ancient volume just within reach. "I believe he feared for the future of his family, not just the estate," she confessed, her voice nearly drowned out by an ominous roll of thunder. There was a journal. It chronicled a league of secrets, old debts, broken loyalties, and a whispered name that could spell ruin. "Which name?" Father Brown asked, his heart racing at the prospect of cherished secrets entwined with betrayal. In a cacophony of rain and dread, a name danced just beyond the edges of conscious thought, lurking in the recesses of hidden truths. "It belonged to Thompson, the lawyer," she exclaimed, eyes widening in realization. Reginald had written of him, describing a pact, something sinister. The words rushed like water from a broken dam, flooding the room with significance as the storm pounded upon the roof, each drop a reminder of the chaos that lay just outside. "Let us not overshadow the facts with sensationalism, dear Mary," Father Brown replied, his hand guiding her toward the depths of the library. "We must approach this with judgment, not scandal. Show me where this journal resides." They moved cautiously through the darkened space, the flickering candles darting against the shelves, revealing volumes whose aged spines held stories long forgotten. He stepped deliberately, keenly aware that the shadows harbored not just dust, but treachery alike, manifesting their deadly grip not upon the books, but upon the very souls who had sought comfort in their pages. As they maneuvered through the maze of mahogany, Mary's fingers brushed against a particularly unremarkable tome, its spine almost entirely worn. "It must be here," she urged, her breath catching. "The journal is beneath this one." Father Brown knelt before her, hesitating just long enough to sense that they weren't alone. A presence lay heavy in the air, the palpable tension suggesting someone had been watching, waiting. "Hurry then," he whispered, "but keep your wits about you." As Mary pulled the tome free, revealing a dusty compartment beneath it, the dim candlelight displayed a dark cover that bore no title, only the familial crest embossed in gold. When she lifted it, the journal felt alive in her hands, the pages whispering secrets trapped for too long. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed from the depths of the library, a grating sound of wood against wood, as if something concealed was being forced open. Father Brown's instincts ignited. "Stay close," he warned, sensing danger encircling them like the storm outside. Yet against their tightening grip on this artifact of truth, a sudden gust hurled the library door wide open, revealing a figure silhouetted in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" a voice thundered, punctuating the night with authority that sent shivers up Father Brown's spine. It was Thompson, a dark figure who stood caught between shadow and candlelight, face almost unrecognizable, hollow and driven. The blood drained from Mary's face as she instinctively clutched the journal to her chest. "Run," Father Brown urged, even as his feet rooted to the floor, an unseen current of confrontation keeping him in place. The stakes had elevated, and betrayal now loomed closer than he had suspected. Thompson's eyes gleamed with something predatory, perhaps even desperate, catapulting the air, thick with unresolved dread. "You have no idea what you just unleashed." The menace in his tone echoed, with the thunder, a prelude to something catastrophic unfolding. In a flash of movement that was as fluid as it was catastrophic, Thompson lunged forward, shadows swallowing his intent, like a hungry beast. "Father!" Mary screamed, as her voice splintered through the tension, the journal slipping just beyond her grip, scattering its contents, precious pages floating like fallen leaves caught in the storm. All froze as the thunder roared outside, shaking the very foundation of their hallowed sanctuary. Father Brown surged into action, the challenge before him grimly clear in the dim light. The night had unfurled a tapestry of betrayal, and in that library flooded with danger, amid wind and whispers, the truth was poised to fracture under the weight of ancient secrets buried deep in the past, threatening annihilation at the hands of those desperate to preserve their own. As he faced Thompson, a realization began to bloom, a reckoning for which they were ill-prepared. And as a gunshot rang out, echoing like judgment within the shadows, Father Brown felt the very ground shift beneath him, marking the onset of a reckoning that would shape the fate of them all. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Act. "What have you done?" The question cracked through the furious cacophony of the storm, like lightning splitting the night, as Father Brown turned slowly to face the chaos now unfolding in the library. Pinned beneath the oppressive shadows that wrapped around him, he felt the tension tingle in his fingertips, the echo of Thompson's voice still resonating, filled with menace and dread. Mary, trembling on the floor, clutched the journal to her chest, eyes blazing with turmoil and uncertainty, while the fluttering pages of forbidden secrets began to scatter like autumn leaves before the wind. As the storm raged, the candle flames danced nervously, flickering shadows, casting phantasmal figures on the walls, embodying the fears that lurked just beyond the periphery of reason. The grasp of urgency closed tighter around Father Brown's heart. He had seen fear before, but this was a visceral thing, a life-or-death edge riding beneath the surface. Yet above it all, the echoing shot had unleashed more than just chaos. It heralded the fall of the already taut facade that bound everyone within Hawthorne Manor, and now it appeared someone would vanish into the clutches of darkness. "Where is Thompson?" Mary's voice trembled as she glanced toward the open doorway, shadows deepening like ink in water. I thought he was—" Her breathing became erratic, the unsteady rhythm matching the distant rumble of thunder that met her words with ominous accompaniment. "He was here, Mary," Father Brown interjected harshly, fear lacing his tones as realization struck him. Thompson wouldn't lie in wait idly outside. A man like him would retreat into the depths of obscurity, either to regroup or mount an assault. "We must not linger. He's a threat, and he will use this confusion to his advantage." Just then, a crashing sound reverberated from the hallway, pulling Father Brown's attention. He turned instinctively, the shadows pooling around him like ink rushed from a quill, matching the specter of apprehension swelling within him. "Stay here," he commanded urgently, moving toward the threshold, his senses heightening as he stepped into the darkness beyond the library. Rain lashed against the window panes, the growing violence outside becoming a twisted reflection of the turmoil within him. He found a creeping edge of fear clutching at the nape of his neck, something alive in the silence, peeking through the veil of the storm. Perhaps he had overestimated Thompson. Perhaps he was indeed gone, but now the uncertainty gripped his reason with chilling force. The possibility of flight, an escape taking shape behind the features of unexpected corners, permeated his mind. Small, forgotten details drifted in the vortex of thoughts. He had seen Thompson's watch glinting in the candlelight moments before the shot had cracked through the air, marking the atmosphere thick with tension. As he edged forward, eyes darting back to the flickering candlelight that shadowed Mary's form, an inkling formed, a detail that had slid from conscious thought amidst the chaos now bubble up to the surface. He recalled catching a glimpse of Thompson's trembling hands stained with the ink of anxiety, a pen yet held. An unfinished letter, some correspondence perhaps penned in haste, that spoke of desperation rather than malice. "We need to find that letter he wrote, if it still exists," Father Brown murmured aloud softly to himself, suddenly returning to the library with renewed clarity. It could hold his truth or reveal a hidden guilt, and as he turned to Mary, something else slipped free from the tangle of thoughts. The way she had earlier touched the journal, fingers barely brushing the leaves, as if fearing the truths it might divulge. "Mary, the letters that scattered across the floor. Did you see one addressed to Thompson, perhaps?" He stepped forward, urgency painting his words. The words he wished he had written. Perhaps a confessional, light breaking through the storm of guilt? The wild glint in Mary's eyes sparked something within him, a flicker of recognition as clarity emerged. "The letters," she echoed breathlessly, brows knitting tightly. I couldn't comprehend what they held." "Let us find them," he insisted adamantly, urgency rising. "They may reveal what has transpired here tonight, slip a mask of innocence upon the guilty, or shred a facade altogether." With trembling hands, she began collecting the contents, haphazardly scattered across the floor, her movements both frantic and methodical. Father Brown's heart raced as he sensed the weight of the storm pressing from outside the manor, menacing the fragile hold they had on the truth. Each letter found was a step toward salvation or catastrophe, their destinies mingling like the rain. Yet a flutter of movement caught his eye, and as the last letter slipped from her fingers, the sound of the great clock chiming caught in the crack of a door creaking open behind them. Both heads turned sharply, breaths held in unison. There, emerging from the shadows, was a figure clad in a rain-drenched coat, a sight that sent icy fingers clutching at Father Brown's heart. "You waste your time, priest." Thompson's voice dripped with barely restrained venom as he stepped fully into view, the gun still gleaming ominously in his hand. The gun was steady now, aimed as unrelenting as fate. It thundered bold against the heavy stillness that crept into the library. "Thompson!" Mary gasped, stepping protectively in front of Father Brown, eyes wide with mounting terror. "You should have run when you had the chance." His gaze flickered to the letters scattered at Mary's feet, a smirk stretching across his lips. "I can't allow anyone to discover the truth that might lie within those pages." A grotesque tension electrified the air, the clandestine truths thirsting to leap forth from darkened depths. And just like that, without warning, the shadows that had been merely a backdrop came alive with obscured motion. A figure darted past Thompson, disappearing as if caught in the tempest that denied entrance to the sun. "Stop him!" Father Brown shouted instinctively, heart racing, the reader's lingering questions shifting suddenly to reality. Thompson turned, gun wavering, mouth opening to raw orders, but the very air shimmered with the sudden charge of revelation. And then the heavy silence was pierced by a crack, much like the gunshot from before, as Thompson faltered, confusion spinning on his features, grappling with shadows entwining in an ethereal dance. A single letter, now wet and glistening, slid from beneath Thompson's coat, a muted plea scrawled upon it. "Forgive me, Reginald." As he stepped toward it, Father Brown felt the world shift. An overwhelming dread gripped him, a realization that not everyone within those walls would emerge whole. The storm surged outside, lightning fracturing the heavens as darkness fell anew, shrouding them all in an uncertain fate, manifesting within the remnants of desperate choices made in an expanse of shadows. Chapter 6. Echoes of the Past. The piercing scream echoed through the candlelit hall, shattering the suffocating silence and flinging Father Brown into a whirlwind of dread, as the tumult from the storm outside joined forces with the turmoil within the house. He spun on his heel, heart hammering in his chest like the furious drums of thunder, eyes straining to make sense of the chaos unfolding. Mary was pointing a trembling finger toward the faded portrait hanging askew on the wall, its glass shattered, the figure within the frame losing its head like a decapitated king. "It's him, Thompson," she gasped, voice tight with terror, panic-stricken eyes wide as autumn moons reflected in murky waters. "He was meant to inherit everything, and now he's—" "Not everything is as it seems, Mary," Father Brown interjected, his voice steady against the friction of chaos. He took a step closer, the remnants of rain-soaked earth still clinging to his shoes as he eyed the splintered frame, an unsettling metaphor, he mused, for the threads of family legacy now fraying in the storm's embrace. "Do you think he truly meant harm?" Mary's voice quaked, carrying the weight of hope, draped in uncertainty, each word a thread weaving through the shadows. He sought only freedom, just as the others do. Freedom, echoed Father Brown grimly, furrowing his brow, but at what cost? This storm is not merely wind and rain. It bears witness to the rippling impact of generations' burdens. His eyes skimmed the shadowy corners of the library, observing how darkness devoured light, an echo of the deep-seated family secrets pressing upon him like leaden weights. Just then, the clock struck the hour with a hollow gong, underscoring the chilling atmosphere that thickened like fog around them. In that instant, upbraiding revelations flared through Father Brown's mind. He recalled their last exchange with Thompson, his desperation emerging beneath the thin veil of civility. "I need to retrieve my rightful place, you understand," he had implored, the threat laying dormant just beneath the surface of every word. Family obligations don't grant anyone a chance at liberation. Mary trembled at his words, searching his face for understanding. "But inheriting desperation is still desperation, Father," she rebutted, swallowing hard, as fear and curiosity intertwined. What of Eleanor? What was her place in this storm? Eleanor, Father Brown mused aloud, his gaze piercing through the veils of memory. Eleanor, the sister lost to the clutches of scandal, a figure ensnared by societal expectations and familial expectations gone awry, leaving her reputation spilled like ink on damp parchment. We must speak to Reginald and Celia. They are the last threads connecting us to Eleanor, and perhaps they can help illuminate this tangled web of treachery. Mary nodded, her breath hitching at the mention of their names, the siblings whose fates had been entwined with Thompson's, bound in agony of unfulfilled aspirations. Father Brown turned resolutely, pushing open the heavy door that led toward the hidden quarters where Reginald and Celia held their place, their presence both a threat and a haven within the crumbling structure. With each step, the floorboards creaked underfoot, skeletal whispers rising like wraiths from forgotten graves, escaping into the tumultuous air. The storm, frequent yet unpredictable, mirrored their hearts, unsettled by the unknown, ebbing through the confines of Hawthorne Manor, infused now with the whispers of bygone phantoms tapping at the windows, demanding to be heard. As they stepped into the adjoining parlor, the shadows loomed larger, and the dim glow from flickering candles cast elongated figures dancing upon the walls, figures that beckoned with ghostly promises. Reginald stood beside the hearth, jaw clenched tightly. His eyes bore the mark of a man carved in the flesh of duty and expectation. The very air cooled, thick with the weight of unresolved grievances, echoing the needs of the past that pulsed like a heartbeat. "What brings you here, Father?" Reginald barked, veiled irritation creeping into his tone as he turned to face them, mimicking the darkness curling back into itself, seeking refuge. "We have nothing to discuss." "Nothing?" Father Brown allowed his voice to deepen, drawing attention away from Mary, eyes pinned to Reginald's clenched fists. "Your family is unraveling, and I discern that among your haunting fears there lies the key to Eleanor's quiet desperation." "Leave her out of this," Reginald hissed, his pallor turning sickly pale, shadows deepening under his eyes. "She was a shadow herself, detached from everyone. You know nothing of our family." "I know everything of families," Father Brown pressed, weaving his thoughts carefully. "Lives are lost, neglected beneath the veils of our struggles. Everyone desires liberation in their own twisted way. Tell me, Reginald, were you jealous of her freedom? The stifled rage simmering beneath Reginald's surface erupted. Eleanor's freedom came with consequences. The family was to be held together. His eyes flicked warily toward a heavy trunk in the corner, a treasure chest of memories tainted with unfulfilled dreams. Celia could have taken what was hers, Celia interrupted, voice resonating like wind chimes cut from their posts. She stepped forward, dark curls framing her troubled visage, fanning old grievances into fresh air. You cannot blame my sister for your failures, Reg. You never understood what it meant to be free. As the two circled each other in a lethal dance, Father Brown's mind whirled. Buried between their desires lay the secrets threatening to unravel their very identities. He peered back toward the trunk, recognizing the dusty grip of choice, lying ironically between security and the freedom they clung to so desperately. But before he could voice the next question, the wind howled mercilessly, sending a shiver through the room. The candles sputtered violently, casting a flickering glow upon a shadow that fell across the threshold, draping the figures with spectral horror. Thompson stood framed at the door, draped in unrelenting rain and shadows, an ominous presence transformed into spectre. "We're not done," he growled, eyes blazing with a savage determination. "The truth isn't just some trinket you can unearth." The weight of his gaze bore down upon them, thick as smoke, and as he advanced, the echo of a gunshot rang in the distance, sending a cold dagger of reality into Father Brown's heart. The storm roared anew outside, and with it, the storm inside them found a wicked host. Secrets churned to life in the growing darkness, and somewhere a clock ticked down, the minutes to reckoning. "Father," Mary breathed from the corner, her fingers reaching instinctively for the journal that may hold the promise of liberation or untold destruction. The tension hung like damning judgment in the air, and in that moment, Father Brown realized that in a world where every breath was steeped in denial, the path to truth wound deeper than anyone dared to tread. The shadows twisted uneasily around them, beckoning forth the ghosts they could neither escape nor ignore. As he opened his mouth to speak, the world blurred. A smirk curled Thompson's lips, echoing ancient shadows, and a quietly whispered warning breathed forth from his throat, chilling the blood in Father Brown's veins. "What will you choose?" And just as the question hung like the charged air before a lightning strike, a deafening crash reverberated above, sending debris raining down, followed by the harrowing silence of consequence, leaving them all gasping at the edge of despair. Chapter 7. The Locked Chamber. The deafening crack of splintering wood merged with the anguished wail of the storm as the chandelier swung perilously above, casting erratic shadows that danced like phantoms on the walls. Ceiling debris fell, showering dust and splinters amid the candle's flickering light, igniting Father Brown's instincts into a frantic flurry. "Mary!" he bellowed, but his voice was drowned by the clamor as the air thickened with dust, an harbinger of chaos unraveling the fabric of Hawthorne Manor. Struggling to remain steady, he darted forward, his heart racing, every sense attuned to the ominous presence of their assailant. "I'm here," Mary gasped, her slender frame illuminated by the sporadic flashes of lightning that lit the room like a strobe of despair. Where did Thompson go? Dread clawed at Father Brown's gut, for he no longer believed Thompson was simply hiding in the shadows. He was a tempest of treachery, exiled yet resolute, aiming to unleash more than chaos. Gripping the wooden rail with hands calloused by years of solitude and contemplation, Father Brown forced himself to steady his breath, and scanned the room for clues amidst the rising panic. "Reginald, Celia," he called out, but their forms had vanished into the swirling twilight, swallowed by the manor's grim recesses. An unsettling stillness followed, punctuated only by the wind that shrieked against the walls, drowning the echo of footsteps. Then a glimmer caught his eye, a glint of metal peeking from the jagged edges of a broken panel inside the collapsing wall. But this was more than debris. It seemed intentional, a fragment hinting not just at destruction, but a hidden intent. As he approached, each creaking floorboard beneath him sang a grim tune of sorrow, resonating with the echoes of history strangled in silence. With a decisive push, he pried the panel free, revealing an ornate brass key glistening amidst the rubble, a key, he realized, with dawning recognition, that belonged to the long-forgotten chamber rumored to lie within the bowels of Hawthorne Manor. The faint scent of decay assailed his senses like a memento mori, blending with the damp atmosphere and igniting a myriad of questions that raced through his mind. "Father, look!" Mary pointed toward the heavy door at the end of the hall, which had swung ajar like a mouth gaping in surprise. "It leads to the old passageway." "Indeed," he muttered, the key warm in his palm, pulsating with the promise of secrets long confined. "But we must tread cautiously. It could prove a treacherous path." The urgency of their situation continued to swell, curdling in his throat. He could not allow them to be isolated. Together, they might uncover truths lost to time. Without another word, Father Brown turned, slowly nudging the door wider with a creak that sent chills down his spine. The air wafted toward him, thick and dark, whispering of things best left undisturbed. With Mary close behind, he stepped into the corridor, each footfall echoing eerie and haunting, a symphony of uncertainty. Damp stains patterned the stone walls, alluding to secrets held captive by darkness. Peering into the gloom, Father Brown racked his brain for the stories told of the hidden space that had remained shrouded throughout their family's legacy, stories lost to fear and intolerable shame. The corridor was lined with ancient portraits, their eyes aglow with a flicker of candlelight, a silent jury gazing down from the ages, judging those who dared intrude. "There!" Mary's voice broke through, brimming with an unexpected thrill. She pointed to a room veiled by shadows further down the corridor, the faint outline of a door whispering of forgotten memories. Heart-pounding, Father Brown propelled himself towards the chamber. The key felt heavy in his pocket, an instrument of revelation poised to unlock both the door and a history trapped in turmoil. With a gentle twist of his wrist and the turning of the key, the door creaked open, a ghostly sigh escaping the wood as if the room had exhaled its burden after many years. Inside, rows of dusty shelves towered overhead, crammed with books and artifacts, remnants of lives touched by desperation and intrigue. An old wooden desk, splattered with the ink of past musings, sat in the center, its surface littered with concealed correspondence that beckoned for scrutiny. "Do you think it's safe?" Mary's voice wavered, hesitating as she stood just beyond the threshold. "Safety is a fleeting concept, my dear," Father Brown replied, his voice laced with the gravity of uncertainty, "but these may hold the answers we seek." As they stepped inside, a sudden crash outside resonated through the manor, rattling the very foundations and echoing deep into the chamber. The atmosphere thickened, heavy with anxiety, as a glint of something nestled against the back wall drew Father Brown's immediate attention. Another key, perhaps, but far more sinister and deliberate. A blood-stained letter, crumpled and torn. He snatched it up, heart leaping, feeling the desire to absorb its secrets thrumming beneath his fingers. The ink, still wet, spelled a name. Eleanor. "Father, what does it say?" Mary edged closer, curiosity wrestling with fear. Father Brown held it up to the flickering light, revealing more than just ink and paper, but an entangled web of pain. Something binds her to this place, entwined with the others, still left in conflict. "Father!" Mary shrieked, pointing toward the doorway they had entered through. The silhouette of Thompson loomed, rain-slick and unyielding. "We're not done," he growled, stepping forward, gun drawn, eyes igniting with a reckless fury. "The truth will not be buried. You dare to defy me in this chamber of secrets." The shadows around them thickened, swirling into an angry whirlwind as Father Brown's mind raced with the implications of Thompson's intrusion. Here, in this dark sanctuary, the fragile limits of morality, revelation, and danger collided as he pushed the letter into Mary's hands, his gaze never wavering from Thompson, a meeting of wills thrumming around them with electric peril. "Father, what will we do?" Mary's voice trembled, a fragile bridge quaking in a torrent of uncertainty. But just as Father Brown opened his mouth to strategize, a gunshot rang out, its sound mingling with the crack of thunder, reverberating through the chamber like the harbinger of despair. The world shifted into chaos, and the room spun as fear clawed at Father Brown's insides with icy fingers, leaving him gasping, gripped by the weight of impending revelation, poised to unleash turmoil. The truth lay tangled and hidden, much like the tempest raging outside, eager to tear the very walls apart. Chapter 8. The Weight of Forgiveness. A blood-curdling scream erupted from the depths of the corridor, jagged as thunder that split the air above the manor, and the shadows of Hawthorne loomed larger, enfolding Father Brown and Mary in a cloying embrace of dread. The echoes of that wail reverberated through the chamber like the last cries of the damned, leaving them frozen amidst the dust-laden air. Spurred by instinct, Father Brown surged toward the source, urgency igniting every muscle. As they navigated the cramped passageway, the wind shrieked outside, drowning their footsteps in its savage lament, but they pressed on, fueled by grim determination. "You can't hide from the truth," a voice roared, strained and infuriated, but its owner was undetectable in the swirling gloom. The air was thick with rain-slicked tension, and Father Brown's mind raced. He sensed grievances coiling tightly around their gathered souls, ready to snap. They burst into the room where the shadows conspired, a dimly lit space shrouded in fragments of scorned lives. There, amidst the flickering candlelight, stood Celia with wild eyes and hair plastered against her forehead, rage writ large across her face. The tableau before Father Brown painted confusion. Reginald loomed just beyond, breathless and frayed, his features carved in ghastly fear. A great tempest raged within their gazes, a maelstrom of resentment and desperation. "What happened?" Father Brown ventured, his voice calm yet firm as he stepped between them, a fragile peacekeeper unfurling in a storm of chaos. "Perhaps it's time for her to face what she has done." Reginald spat, his voice cracking like the thunder outside, each syllable a jagged shard flung at his sister. "Everything is because of you, Celia." "Don't act the martyr, Reg," Celia snapped, her lips curling back in disdain. "Your failures don't justify your whims. For once, Take responsibility instead of projecting your lies. Father Brown stood between them, sensing the truth lodged in their rancor, festering anew in this crucible of shared fears. He seen beyond their stormy exchanges, glimpsing the underlying regrets binding them more tightly than family. Hatred, yes, but also unfulfilled connections clawing to surface. With every word slashing through the suffocating atmosphere, the walls widened with the weight of buried cries for redemption. Tell me, what truth binds you here? None of us can walk this path cloaked in shadows, he urged, his gaze unwavering, witnessing the flickers of hidden animosities beneath their strained masks. The weight of forgiveness often proves more difficult than an hidden grudge. Reginald recoiled, the hurt lurking behind his indignation momentarily evaporating. Forgiveness? You think it's that easy? I've tried, every single day since she took him from us. His voice spiraled into despair, trembling fingers clenching against the cool stone wall. Mary, still somehow tethered to her burgeoning strength, exchanged glances with Father Brown. She stepped forward gently, embodying the life they sought to keep alive in that chamber. Perhaps, Reginald, if you let her speak, you might understand. You both carry burdens so heavy they may well crush you. Celia's breath caught, eclipsed by a heavy blush of realization. You say that, but who am I to absolve your guilt, Reginald? The choice you made must haunt you still. What if I had saved him instead? What if I had... Her voice crumbled, and in that moment, the air thickened unbearably. Save him? Reginald shot back, his brow furrowing as he stepped into the fray. What choice did you have, sister? You ran, and we both know why, he hissed, the bitterness thick enough to slice. You speak of choices when you are unable to acknowledge your own treachery. It was your fault too, Reginald. You never took care. Enough. Father Brown raised his voice, resolute, like the clanging of warning bells, echoing through their unresolved squabble. Listen to me. You deceive yourselves if you believe this back and forth will bear any fruit. Life is more complex than blame. Have you not realized that? The sudden quiet that fell was a palpable entity, as heavy as the clouds roiling beyond the stained glass. Father Brown studied their faces, the furies that masked deeper currents. He considered the weapons they held, Celia's layered hurt, Reginald's simmering resentment, and therein lay the truth and the key that could unlock their chains. Secrets, pointed fingers, agonized hearts, all will forge a path to the answer we seek. He pressed, gently, keenly aware of the fragile tether between them. One thread at a time, you might unravel your own tangled webs of deceit. A shudder of realization swept through them, yet the air grew thicker, laden with something daring to emerge. The candlelight flickered alarmingly, the winds howling like a chorus of grief, and without warning, a shattering sound erupted from somewhere beyond. The door, drowning their precarious moment. Father Brown turned sharply, as did Mary, their hearts racing, an unseen spectre of fate brushing by their shoulders. No, not now, he murmured, the urgency clawing at him. Lightning cracked outside, illuminating the darkness, and in that instant, something glinted near Reginald's foot, a subtle glimmer. Father Brown lunged forward, his breath caught, only to discover what lay shrouded there, a silver locket, small and unassuming, yet slick with a dampness that echoed the tension of their unfolding tragedy. Reginald's eyes widened, and in that moment, comprehension evaded him as if a spectre had passed between them, leaving uncertainty in its wake. No, I didn't, he stammered, the guilt dawning anew, darker than the shadows pressing in. "Father, look!" Mary called, her tone now wavering yet again, tilting with dawning horror. "There's a message inside." "Father, don't!" shouted Celia, panic painting her cheeks as she reached out to grasp the locket, but time unraveled too quickly. Father Brown had already pried it open. Within the locket lay the regret of ages, a photograph marred by time, and as Father Brown examined it closely, the storm grew louder, echoing their plight in mocking resonance. Ignoring the gale that clawed at them from outside, he peered at the faces, caught in a grim confluence of emotions. Two souls whom guilt had entwined irrevocably, now laid bare beneath the flickering flame of revelation. Suddenly, another crash reverberated through the manor, silencing their burgeoning tide of understanding. The floodgates of despair opened as the sinister truth draped itself across them like a shroud, and as fear fell over the room, Father Brown was left staring into the abyss of their shared darkness, where love and betrayal intertwined, whispering chilling stories yet untold. "Reginald," he murmured in quiet realization, gripping the locket as thunder raged outside, "the truth does not rest easily. What have you truly hidden?" And it was then, amidst the shrieking winds, that an ominous footfall interrupted their gathering storm, heralding the arrival of a truth that would shatter their precarious world further still. Chapter 9. The Crossroads of Truth. A gunshot split the air again, sharp as a crack of thunder, and the muted echoes rolled through the halls of Hawthorne Manor like an uninvited ghost. Mary gasped, pressing herself against the cold stone wall, her breath hitching as Father Brown instinctively moved to shield her, fear flickering in the depths of his keen eyes. The transient buzz of uncertainty buzzed in that candlelit chamber, the shadows lengthening around them like a dark tapestry woven with threads of dread. Crouched low, the initial shock dulled by desperation, Father Brown peered toward the murky doorway just past Celia and Reginald, both frozen, their faces an alarming portrait of terror. "Stand ready," he cautioned, eyes darting to the shattered remains of a small stained-glass window, jagged edges glistening ominously in the flickering glow of candlelight. Outside, the storm unleashed its fury, a cacophony of howling winds mingling with the distant tolling of church bells marking the hour of reckoning. "Whatever comes next, we shall face it together." "Father, what if—" Mary began, fear etching itself across her porcelain features, but Father Brown silenced her with a grave nod. The tension tightened around them like a noose, constricting their movements as they contemplated their fate. From behind her, Reginald stepped forward, his face lit with defiance, conflicting emotions raging against his better judgment. "I'll not cower here while the truth stalks among us," he declared, voice vibrating with a bravado that masked the quaking in his heart. His gaze traced the shadows, searching for the source of the threat. "If Thompson is hunting secrets, then let him come. Secrets breed lies, and lies—" "Reginald, enough!" Celia snapped, her voice cutting through the thick tension. "This is no game. You would bring ruin upon us all with your recklessness." She drew closer to Father Brown, as if seeking not just protection, but solace from the approaching storm outside. "We must confront our past before it consumes us." Eyes narrowed, Father Brown recognized the truth hanging over them. Their very existence shaped by fractured histories, pasts they had buried. "Then let us deliberate the truths we each harbor," he said, his voice steadied by resolve. He stepped onto the threshold of the room where the echoes of remorse and confrontation coiled tension tightly in the air. You may find that forgiveness is often laced with the bitter tang of justice. As the wind gushed through the broken window, sending a shiver up his spine, the atmosphere shifted. The waxy candles flickered wildly, casting restless shadows on the walls that seemed to dance to the rhythm of the escalating storm. A commotion rose outside, punctuated by distant cries and the barking of a dog, a harbinger of panic that mirrored their own. Father Brown closed his eyes briefly, banishing the desperation stealing through him as he focused on the task at hand. Today's confrontation could unravel a truth deeper than any treachery. Each of us has secrets we would rather keep buried, he began, choosing his words carefully, letting them hang in the air. Reginald, your anger speaks of idolatry to blame. Celia, your guilt clings like the wet cloak over your shoulders. But you must embrace the light before the darkness claims you. As lightning erupted outside, illuminating the chamber briefly, a glimmer caught Father Brown's eye. A familiar presence lingered. Nearby, a small silver object, angular yet alluring. A letter, its envelope crisp yet stained. It rested on the dusty floor, as if waiting, beckoning answers. Stay alert, he instructed, retrieving the note. This could offer clarity amidst the obscurity. Celia's breath quickened, her fingers trembling when Father Brown held it up against the flickering candlelight. Whose hand penned these sentiments? He murmured, before unfolding the letter, revealing a delicate scrawl that spilled words of longing and reproach. This belongs to Eleanor, I presume, he queried, his eyes darting to Mary, who gazed back wide-eyed. To my dearest Eleanor, our shadows are closing in. He read aloud slowly, feeling the weight of each word wrap around him, casting a new light on the tumultuous storm, brewing both within and outside the manor walls. What binds this name to your shared histories? But why would you read this now? Reginald interjected, panic threading through his voice. Do not give breath to her name if it invites grief upon us. To shun the truth invites more grief still, Father Brown retorted, his focus unwavering. This letter cradles sorrow. It is not merely a whisper of what was, but a roadmap to what lies ahead. Tell me, Celia, he continued, directly piercing the heart of those gathered, what do you fear most about confronting Eleanor's choices, her actions? The air vibrated with silence, taut with a sense of unspoken truths, betrayal shrouded in the murk of hidden anguish. I fear, Celia at last whispered, what I may find buried beneath those actions. As thunder crashed harder, pounding like a malevolent heartbeat, the door rattled on its hinges, a sudden betrayal of the fragile sanctuary they had forged amidst the bitter strife. The shadows stretched long across the floorboards, and Father Brown could almost feel the weight of the lurking dangers tightening their hold. Then they heard it, the distinct creak of a boot stepping on the floor, just outside their sanctuary, an unmistakable warning echoing in the silence that followed. It's him, Reginald breathed, face pale beneath the flickering light. He's here. A flash of lightning illuminated the doorway, and within that split second, they all bore witness to the figure standing on the brink of revelation. Thompson, cloaked in shadows yet brimming with purpose, gun still drawn, intent hidden behind closed lips. The breath caught within Father Brown's chest, realization dawning like a harrowing tide, flushing over him. He's come not merely for vengeance, but to silence the truths that bind us all. As the energy of the room surged and pulsated, time suspended itself in a stark moment of realization. The storm could no longer be ignored, and neither could the tangled web of their secrets. "You dare bring this here?" Thompson snarled, his voice slicing through the thick atmosphere like a knife. Without further thought, Father Brown reached for the hidden blade of truth. Standing between them all, "You might find," he asserted, "truth-love is a more perilous weapon than malice." But just as Thompson poised to act, darkness cloaked the light, rendering Father Brown's statements impotent against the lightning. Suddenly, another deafening gunshot rang out, echoing the ferocity of thunder outside, and the world around them dissolved into chaos, leaving behind a shroud of suspense and fear emptying into the vast, echoing nothingness. Father Brown's heart raced, knowing that he had crossed into a place where the volatility of human greed encroached the fragile seams of their darkest truths, and the realization that neither past nor future could shield them from the choices before them dangled as delicately as the last strand of sanity within the storm. Chapter 10. The Confession That Came Late. A scream shattered the air, slicing through the tempest as surely as the rolling thunder outside, igniting a frenzy of motion within the candlelit confines of Hawthorne Manor. Father Brown pivoted, eyes snapping toward Mary, who stood frozen as though a spectre had gripped her throat. "What was that?" she gasped, her voice barely above the rush of wind clawing at the shattered stained glass. The flickering candles wavered, the flames light dancing, in a grotesque imitation of their growing dread. In that moment, a wild thought darted through Father Brown's mind. The echo of anguish outside might hold the key to the truths they were desperate to unravel. And yet what truths lurked in the shadows of despair? At that instant, the door burst open, a gust of wind sweeping into the room, as disheveled and chaotic as their world had become. Thompson, unmistakably frayed at the edges, staggered inside, soaked from the storm, his face a mask of turmoil. "I've seen him," he cawed, chest heaving beneath the weight of revelation. "I know who killed Eleanor." His voice reverberated within the walls, each syllable heavy with the gravity of his claim. Instinctively, Father Brown stepped closer, a coiled sense of curiosity mixed with caution. "Speak, Thompson. What have you discovered?" "The butcher. He did it." Thompson flared, eyes wide with panic, drawing nearer, his desperation palpable. "I saw him lurking in the shadows, holding the same gun, just as he had the night she died." The name Butcher conjured vague recollections within Father Brown's mind, an unsettling image of cutting tools and stained aprons, a grotesque juxtaposition of art and violence. The room erupted in a clamor of disbelief and horror. Reginald's jaw dropped, Celia blanched, and Mary's grip tightened around Father Brown's arm. "You must be mistaken," Reginald berated. "That's preposterous. Arthur's just an innocent man trying to make a living." "Innocence is a fragile veil," Father Brown interjected, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of foreboding. "What you say may very well shatter illusions we have clung to." He turned to Thompson, whose messy hair hung about his forehead as he paced, revealing an anxious energy that suggested a man wrestling with both guilt and urgency. "But what you've seen, Thompson, surely it is not just a phantom of your imagination." "No, no." Thompson shook his head vehemently, wild eyes darting toward the broken window as if the rain-slicked night might yield further confirmation. "I swear to you, it was him. I recognized the man and the weapon." The moment hung heavy, the storm pulsing outside, echoing the turmoil within the gathering. Father Brown's instinct urged him to examine every facet of the claim, to dissect the truths obscured by fear and chaos. "Tell me more about this butcher. What were the circumstances under which you witnessed this?" "I saw him behind the chapel," Thompson began, as the storm mocked his tale, thunder clashing as though in argument. "He had a gun and was trashing something. Papers, records. He was angry, moaning curses. I was too frightened to approach, but when I stepped closer, I thought I saw him clutch something shiny, an object." "An object?" Father Brown's interest sharpened. A knife in the hands of a butcher would have greater implications than mere murder. "What did it resemble?" "I'm not certain," Thompson stammered, suddenly struck with uncertainty. "But there was blood." The declaration hung like an echo in the air, punctuated by another bolt of lightning. All eyes were now drawn to the glistening remnants of the conflict, stained on the floor, the letters crumpled and ink-smeared, indifferent witnesses to the passions twisted within. "Blood," Celia whispered, biting her lip, glancing nervously at Father Brown. "What if the locket and the letters are connected? What if Eleanor had something more that implicates this butcher?" Father Brown's mind raced, darting between the fractured histories lying bare around him. "Then we must investigate further. What secrets that lay buried might yet cause more destruction?" He thought of the choices each man and woman had made, choices spiraling like the storm outside, raging and uncontrolled. "But what if what Thompson believes is not true?" he admonished, sensing an insidious ripple in the air. The fear amongst them thickened, voices rising until he raised a hand for silence. "Stop!" he commanded, the force of his voice a gust of wind against the burgeoning tempest. "Each of you carries a dark secret, one that might threaten the fragile web we weave, secrets that fuel this storm. Reginald, what is your truth? There is depth in your silence." Reginald drew back, a shadow creeping across his handsome features. "I didn't think, I just assumed." "Assumptions kill more than words," Father Brown pressed, eyes searching Reginald's, grappling with the telltale twitch of his fingers. "What was Eleanor's connection to the butcher? You must share something, lest we walk blindly into the abyss." For a moment, Reginald's control faltered. He clenched his fists, and his troubled voice shook as he spoke. "Eleanor and I were not just companions. We found ourselves entangled in things, a partnership that was risky." "That was merely a smokescreen," Thompson interjected harshly, a shadow of his earlier conviction dissipating. "You knew of the butcher's dealings?" Celia recoiled at the accusation, frowning deeply. "This is wrong. Eleanor was—" "There are more layers to Eleanor than the public saw," Father Brown interjected, sensing a deeper undercurrent of fear beneath their raucous exchanges. "She may have straddled the line between light and dark. Tell us, Reginald." As thunder rumbled overhead and rain lashed against the windows, a palpable tension surged forward, the night threatening to burst with yet more revelations. Reginald blinked, then gasped, his confession tumbling forth surprisingly loud amid the storm. "She was not the saint we believed. She carried secrets, was involved with these people who misconducted their business. I did not realize until after." A cacophony of gasps erupted, each voice mingling with chilling reality, when suddenly the candle flames sputtered audibly, dimming ominously. Father Brown stared at the floor, where the flickering light illuminated an old, blood-stained letter, creased and trembling with dampness. Astonished recognition flooded through him as his fingers traced the edges. In that instant, terror clashed within him. What, what is this? He breathed. Before he could lift the envelope, another shot rang out, shattering the air around them. The walls reverberated, and everything fell into anguished silence. Every heart caught, suspended, a dagger poised in the air. And as thunder erupted again, he realized someone had stepped into the room, shadowed and unreadable, a new array of intrigue, swirling around the storm that clutched Hawthorne Manor in its icy grip. "Perhaps I'm here," the voice purred, "to deliver the truth that no one else dares to confront." Chapter 11, The Final Game of Deception. A gunshot split the air, a deafening bullet that shattered the very fabric of the stormy night and hurled Father Brown into an abyss of uncertainty. The candles flickered charred illusions as shadows danced malevolently upon the walls, making the old manor feel like a living, breathing entity wrapped in capes of daunting darkness. "No!" Mary's voice quivered, eyes blazing with terror as she sank down toward the floorboards, her hand clutching the edge of a faded carpet that whispered of countless secrets as it shivered beneath her. "What has transpired?" Father Brown demanded, heart racing, every sense sharpened by an instinct honed over years of facing the dark underbelly of human nature. He gazed frantically at Thompson, who was now rooted in place beneath the flickering light, his gun arm still poised, as if the echoes of his shot smeared horror across the room. Thunder crashed outside, a torturous melody to the unfolding chaos. "I had to silence him," Thompson stammered, his voice shaking, desperation spitting from his strangled throat. "Eleanor's death. It haunts me. I couldn't let this truth emerge. She was my only way out." "Your way out?" Reginald stepped forward, his composure unraveling, as he connected the harrowing dots laid bare. The tension coiled tighter, like the terrible storm outside. "You killed her? You coward!" The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation, while Mary's face paled into the very essence of disbelief. "But Thompson was always desperate," she murmured, as if confessing her own doubts to the brazen tempest. "He couldn't have done—" "Enough!" Father Brown interjected, his calm authority reasserting itself like the morning sun, breaking through a night riddled with shadows. "Flights of accusation will avail us nothing. Thompson, what do you truly know?" The door creaked ominously behind him, revealing new layers of tension as the tempest raged unabated. Outside, the raw winds roared, but inside the sanctuary of half-light, it felt as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for the storm of confessions to unveil hidden truths. "Father," Thompson said slowly, forcing his gaze upward like a man rising from the depths of despair. "The butcher was Eleanor's ally. I saw those letters, letters that should never have existed." "Letters?" Father Brown's voice sharpened with the urgency of the storm itself. "What letters?" "Evidence. Evidence that could topple everything," Thompson gasped, trembling as he recounts searing memories of stained parchment. "She intended to expose him. I couldn't let that happen. It was a matter of survival." In a heartbeat, the once frayed connections untangled themselves within Father Brown's mind. Like threads of an intricate tapestry, twisted meanings and veiled motives flashing before him like lightning. Trusting his instincts, he turned toward Celia, who stood apart, her face coated in shadows, lips pursed tightly. "You too know something," Celia faltered, but only briefly. "Eleanor's involvement with the butcher, it was more than simply business," she breathed, hesitation echoing through the air between them like a chime of fractured glass. "I saw them speaking behind the manor. I was sure it was innocent." or cleverly disguised business transactions between conspirators. Father Brown's voice sliced through the fog of excuses. What truly lay beneath this partnership? As starlit raindrops crashed against the windows, Celia found her resolve crumbling under the weight of a sudden secret. Money. Eleanor spoke of owing something to the butcher. If he didn't get what he demanded, the lives of her loved ones would be at stake. Reginald stepped back, eyes wide with fear, as a revelation dawned within him. All this suffering, it's tied to a debt, but why would she risk the butcher wielded such power? Isn't power eternally intertwined with destruction? Father Brown posited, eyes alight with a fervor, drawn from the shadows enveloping them. We must consult those letters. Those letters are no simple record. They're part of their treachery, Thompson shouted, suddenly fueled as fear morphed into a sense of reckless abandon. I should have burned them. The butcher is dangerous. We have to go before he arrives. Before Thompson could complete his plea, another clap of thunder reverberated through Hawthorne Manor, drowning out not just sound, but hope too, as pallid fists of doubt tightened their grip upon Father Brown and the rest. In that tumultuous moment, a thought struck him. An innocent presence loomed larger than the storm, and the butcher was merely a shadow in the larger game at play. Do not base your urgency upon mere hints of shadows, Thompson, he urged, voice firm and compassionate as he sought guidance within the chaos. Tell me the true implications of your claim. Were you involved in Eleanor's plan? I was to help her. She needed someone to take care of everything, Thompson cried, sorrow spilling over into panic, raw urgency suffusing his stance. I was meant to protect her, but then things spiraled and she... He broke, the guilt suffocating him, words dying in the throat. That's enough, Father Brown declared, determination solidifying his resolve. We are all entangled in a web of duplicity that transcends the mire you've all woven around Eleanor. But this butcher, is he not the real puppet master? The chamber grew tense, shadows deepening, hearts racing as the bitter truth closed around them. Just then, a faint scratching sound echoed like a furtive whisper, not from the tempest outside or the struggle within, but something hidden, perhaps an echo of guilty footsteps. Father Brown's pulse quickened with the violent fervor of dawning realization. There's another presence, he murmured, glancing toward the door where the eerie sound rattled against the wood. Just as he approached, the door swung open, revealing a figure obscured by the rain-soaked night, a silhouette, ambiguous and deadly. Did someone summon me to this tangled mess? The newcomer spoke, her tone as smooth as a blade poised against tenuous flesh, yet beneath lay a predatory edge that slithered into the shadows like a thief. Recognition suffused Father Brown with immediate chilling clarity. Eleanor's sister, Claire, had arrived to claim her stake in this intricate game of deception. Claire, Father Brown exclaimed, what revelation do you hold? In response, Claire stepped forward, axis of the night illuminated, forcing the truth into the electric void between them. The truth, she replied, voice dripping with intent, is that no one will leave until the final game is settled. With the air crackling with tension and the storm growing violent, the threads of intrigue twisted tighter, leaving Father Brown grappling with the harrowing certainty that the storm had only just begun. Murder had seized the stage, and they were all mere players in a game fraught with deadly consequences. Chapter 12. The Sparrow's Final Song. A deafening crack of thunder resounded through Hawthorne Manor, scrambling any lingering concepts of safety as a limp body crumpled near the hearthstone, the scent of iron saturating the air. Father Brown's heart raced as the flickering candlelight caught the pale face of Thompson, now sprawled against the fraying carpet, the tale of guilt and desperation written across his lifeless eyes. "No!" Mary's voice sliced through the chaos, a gasp of disbelief spilling from her lips. But it was the stark finality of Thompson's stillness that momentarily rooted her to the spot. Shadows clung to the walls like dark specters, watching the tragic unraveling before them, the storm outside offering no comfort. "Stand back!" Reginald shouted, his voice distorting in the atmosphere, thick with fear and confusion. His hands trembled at his sides, caught between shock and the need to act, while Celia clutched the edges of her dress, eyes darting at every creak and groan of the ancient house, as if it would swallow them whole. But Father Brown, heart-pounding, focused on the faint rustle of paper beneath the roaring chaos, and the sharp glint of something nestled beneath Thompson's body, a folded letter, still clutched in his fingers like a lifeline in the tempest. In a rush, he knelt, brushing aside trembling hands as he pried open the envelope. The flickering light revealed spidery handwriting, stained with something more sinister than just ink. The very fabric of human treachery woven into each twisted phrase. The words seemed to swirl in the air, mocking their search for clarity. Eleanor was entangled in chains she could not break. "For the butcher knows how to wield these secrets," he murmured, his voice falling barely above the whisper of the rain. "I didn't want it to come to this." Claire stepped forward, ghostly pale through the candlelight, her face a mask holding back tempestuous emotions lurking just beneath the surface. "You must understand, we were brothers and sisters of shadows, but Eleanor, she was too radiant for such darkness." The glitter in her eyes hinted at veils of hidden motives wrapped in grief. She never grasped the danger. She was bound to expose them. And Thompson... "Bound to expose whom?" Father Brown countered, a sudden burst of clarity slicing through the clamor. The storm wasn't just outside, but unleashed in the very souls of the gathered. He gestured with the bloodied letter, its inked words, now, woven into the fates, connecting everyone present. "Do you claim this, butcher, or are there darker forces at play?" Reginald stepped closer, his voice low yet trembling. "Claire, you were there, just as much as we were. Tell us truly, was it Eleanor's flame that consumed you? Were you protecting or dooming her?" The tension coiled tighter yet in the room, the candlelight a fragile shield against the coming revelations, the war flame of truth and guilt dancing in tandem. "I was protecting her," Claire insisted, her agitation cloaked in a desperate sincerity. "Those letters, the butcher sought to control Eleanor, but I thought I could handle him. I should have understood that none of us are immune to entrapment. It was about family, about saving her life." Mary, trembling, ventured a step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, she would have preferred the truth, even if it pierced her? We all carry the weight of our secrets, but Eleanor, she was never intended to shoulder the sins of others." Beneath their words, a deeper yet genuine anxiety spun into the air. Father Brown's brow furrowed as he pulled tighter on the frayed threads, tugging at his conscience. "Secrets are cages, Claire, but they can also be doors." What did Thompson truly mean when he claimed submission? As the walls appeared to shudder with the weight of his disclosure, he could almost feel the collective heartbeat of fear thrumming within the darkened wood. Witnessing the cards slowly fall from Claire's facade, fractures of guilt and remorse began to seep forth, juxtaposed against the shadows that surrounded them. It was never just about protecting her, Claire confessed, her tone dropping to a guilty hush. The butcher was not a monster to me. He was my protector once, she admitted, the stormy winds outside shrieking like the angry ghosts of her confession. Eleanor and I both hoped to escape from him, but I was more ensnared than she knew. What do you mean? Reginald pressed, advancing into the encroaching gloom. The tension taut as stretched wire, and the candlesticks flickered violently, shadows warping dangerously on the walls. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder resounded, as if punctuating the gravity of their shared secrets. The letters, Claire continued, her voice shivering with intensity. They were a promise, a life between the butcher and me. I never intended for him to harm Eleanor, but my silence became complicit. Father Brown halted, eager thoughts rushing through him like wind through the trees in a tempest. Were you a means to an end? Did you betray not only your sister, but every truth she stood for? The words laid heavy like the rain pouring outside, where droplets thundered against the windows, fierce and unyielding. No, Claire cried, her face stained with remorse. This was never part of the design. I was meant only to protect her. Her hands sank to her sides, fingers now speckled with thickening resolve. But do you not see? The butcher is on his way here. I had overlooked that storm brewing beneath. His blade reflects the desires of men cloaked in shadows. Which means all of us might be in... Reginald started, but a sudden gasp stalled his words. The door swung open, flinging icy gusts into the room, as a figure emerged from the rain-swept night, silhouetted against the darkness like a coming storm. Tall, dangerous, and unmistakably the butcher himself. Ah, the family of faltering sparrows, a voice smoldered from the recesses of the night, a twisted smile illuminating the shadows. Do you honestly think you can play games with the master of strings without strings attached? The depth of the butcher's menace was palpable, weaving dread around them, as the air crackled with an unsettled fury. The revelations of betrayals hanging thickly like clouds, ready to burst. Father Brown felt the ground shift beneath him. The truth hung like a pendulum over a chasm, and he understood in an instant. Every hidden motive was laid bare beneath the butcher's cruel gaze. The true game of deception had spiraled, and one singular truth echoed within him. The final act had only just begun, entwined irrevocably with peril and dark realizations yet to unfold.